Again, we're all acutely aware of what's been going on globally, and we're all experiencing something together, right? For the first time, probably in all of our lives, we're feeling something on a global scale because we are all experiencing the pandemic at one time. While there are other things also in our lives that are shifting and flowing through, and illnesses of different varieties, and maybe deaths that have nothing to do with the pandemic, and so on. So we thought this would be a really good topic for today's conversation, and how these modalities really can help people in need.
Pain and suffering can be a very tricky subject. I talked a little bit about some of the core shamanic concepts. Another one is that a lack of energy in a lot of cases is the issue, and finding that energy yourself is a way to recover that power, to recover that energy. We talked about your horses, that, as a power animal, that energy was recovered for you and now supports you. So suffering and pain and suffering can have a visceral response in pretty much everyone. There's a compassion that is true even in the most hardened person, that there's a certain level where it's really going to get to you to see somebody hurting. The instant reaction in a lot of cases is what can be classified as a savior type response. I must save that person. I must reach out and do something. And that may or may not be the right choice or the right option for that person, where the pain, the suffering that they're going through is how they are recovering their power. And if I take the suffering away from that person, I've really taken away their capability to find that power. So when I approach a client and start working with them, what I'm really looking to understand or to be is the guide, the map. Right? That's an inside joke that we will get at one point, but be the map for the person to show them the path to what it is they're trying to find. Now, that might mean that that person is still going to pass, that that person is still going to have suffering, but they're able to see the power that they're achieving or the power that they're recovering. My view of taking that suffering away from them, an immediate grasp of, oh, I've got to save them, steals just as much energy from them as a soul loss or a loss of power that they might experience. So it's important to offer energy, to offer the path, to offer to be the map and the guide. But doing so, back to some of our earlier conversation, without a right and wrong, without a preconceived idea of what success means to me. If I walk into it going, well, I've got to take away your suffering. Well, I've just stolen your energy too. So it comes back to that hollow bone. How can I be available to help that person by guiding and being there, helping them along the path, versus helping them in a way that I think is the way it should go. I had a good friend of mine I used to work with. She lost her son several years now to suicide, which was very doubly painful for her. And she came to me really just longing for some sort of an understanding. Nothing I was going to be able to do was going to bring her son back. Nothing I was going to be able to do was going to be able to take that pain away. But what she was asking was, is he okay? Is there some sort of an ability to understand that no matter what it felt like for her, no matter what it appeared to other people, did he fulfill what he was trying to do? So I did, what is a fairly standard shamanic journey, which is really just connecting in with the energy and asking what's out there. And these various images showed up that of course meant absolutely nothing to me. And I was able to just talk to her and say, I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing, an image of this or an image of that. And you could just see her lighten and feel that made sense to her. That made sense in their lifetime of his experiences and their experiences together. That just gave her a sense that whatever happened, wherever he was at peace. And she's able to then release those connections and release what could have held her very tightly to that situation and eventually drained her energy off and caused her issues. But by releasing that, she was able to fully release him, but really it's about releasing herself. She's the one that has to still be in this world, in this body. So recovering her energy, recovering what she was bleeding off, just allowed her to heal without getting him back, without losing the pain. The pain was still there, but she was able to move forward at that point.
No one can escape pain and suffering in this life. It's part of our human condition, this experience, this journey that we chose to take for some reason. And seeing it from that perspective, for me, it's very important to see pain and suffering as something that is real for the person that is experiencing it. And like Mark was saying before, it can be experienced differently depending on the person. And oftentimes, as we see people suffering, we may have our own judgment about it. Oh, that's not a big deal. Get over it. I mean, this is nothing, right? But allowing the person to really feel and honor what they're experiencing is something very important. And it's important for me as a practitioner to hold the space in where they are, to meet them where they are. It's not up to me to judge them and say, like, this is not a big deal. But also help them to create some perspective on what they're experiencing, to create a bigger vision of or panorama of what their life is. Because when we are experiencing pain, we focus on the pain, right? If you have a knife pointing at you and going inside, your whole attention is in that part. And it's really hard to start getting perspective. Oh, this is not my whole body. This is not my whole being. This is just a small part of me. That is very uncomfortable. So part of the process is really helping the person, the client, to create more perspective, more space, and also to tune into their own resources, their own gifts, to be able to process what is happening to them, what they're experiencing, what's creating this pain, how they're responding to the pain. what does it do to their energy field? What does it do to how their energy moves? Do I become more angry? Do I become more impatient, irritated? Because it can be something very subtle or something that is not that specific, as it can be something very specific and big. But to be able to bring light to all these different parts of how we react, how we address, how we face pain and suffering, and that we can move beyond that as well. We can move through the pain and suffering and get to the other part, and that we can also learn to trust that process, because while we're going through it, we feel we're going to stay there forever, that there is not another part, the other side. So part of my process and helping them to see that they can trust the process, that they can trust that there is something on the other side, but that it is also important to feel what they're feeling, that all those feelings are important, whether it is if they have anger or sadness and grief, whatever it is that there is there, it is important to be honored. Because the more that we're going to push it away, I mean, when an organism experiences pain, it retrieves, it contracts, it goes away. Other than when you feel pleasure, you want to go closer and get more. So it is important to bring awareness to what's happening to them and where they're going, and give that space and allow the natural flow and not the natural movement of our being to go through it and not get stuck. Because oftentimes we get stuck in that. And that's what keeps us in the pain and suffering, and keeps our narrow mind into what is bad about this, and what my horrible life is, and how painful it is, and all the suffering I'm experiencing. So it's about allowing the natural flow and the natural movement of the pain, and also that it comes to a place where it gets resolved as well, that we pass it on, that we don't have to carry it anymore. And all the lessons that we learn from it as well, because it has the capacity to teach us a lot of things. So that's how I help them. And oftentimes, I keep hearing from different places, like how we attract things, and this is always happening to me. So there is different aspects of the pain and suffering, and how we may be also attracting things, certain experiences. And I always said to my clients when they come, in big distress and everything is so big and so painful, and I say, kind of jokingly, but I said, wonderful, here's an opportunity for growth. But also honoring what they're experiencing. So it's not only saying, oh, you're attracting this because you felt you haven't healed something. Well, that may be true. And it's important to look at it from what they're experiencing now, and tracing back if this is something that is happening to them over and over again, and be able to go to the root of what happened originally that didn't get resolved and created this spiral, this portal that continues replaying and replaying and replaying.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because there are so many layers to this, right? And starting with a place of honor, and then you don't know who is coming to you in what context in terms of their past life experiences that have stuck with them, and maybe that's why a particular issue has resonated so very, very deeply with them, or something that they've experienced through this lifetime, or from other contexts, right? Well, you just never know. And I also think, it's interesting what you were talking about, honoring and holding the space. I love Lee Harris and Lee Harris Energy, and he was just mentioning in a class that I was taking the other day that he has a friend that's on her transition out from this physical lifetime and physical body. And he said, I just showed up for her. And she said, that's all I needed. That's all I needed was for you to come here and hold the space for me. And talk about honoring someone, regardless of where they are. And this is a person that's on their way out of their physical body. And yet that was so very important to them. And it goes back to what Mark was saying too, not to necessarily see it as suffering and trying to take that and rob them of whatever they're meant to experience through that life transition, but just holding the space for them. So I think it's a really beautiful thing. And again, we are complex beings. So we are the subject of all of these different experiences that we've had on this plane and others. So we are here to learn, very much so, and hopefully transition what no longer serves us if we're able to, with the help of practitioners like yourself.
There is something about, like the core energetics talks about, or the spiritual aspect of the core energetics, which is called the path work. And it's how we tend to repeat our childhood hurts. Mm. And we keep doing that, hoping that we are going to resolve it differently, or that we're going to get what we didn't get. So we're always wishing for a different outcome. However, if we continue doing the same thing, we're going to continue having the same outcome. It changed. Something different needs to happen for us to have a different outcome.
And this is the beauty of energy work. I mean, that's,
exactly.
There's nothing better than to work at an energy level to transform those things.
Yes, and the importance is about awareness and consciousness. Yes. Because that's how the energy is moving. Right. The energy has consciousness. Yes. And if we change the consciousness of the energy, then it's going to move somewhere else. What Mark was saying about his experience with his friend, about loss and grief, and how painful that is. I mean, that's the moments where I felt immense pain and suffering in my clients when they come with that. And it makes me think of a client that I had several years ago, and she came because her mother had passed away, and she was in a very deep grief, and she had been in that for 6 months, and she was in a deep depression, and she didn't want to live, and she didn't find any joy in life. So she came to see me, and I noticed also all the different emotions that were present. So it wasn't only the sad and the grief, but it was also the anger that was behind that. The anger for the loss, the anger for God, the anger for life, the injustice of what happened to her, that she lost her mom. And so we started doing some hypnosis, first to bring some calmness, to bring some ease within herself. And during that process of doing hypnosis, which is what I normally do when I'm working with grief, is to welcome the person that had passed on in hypnosis. And this is something so deep and so transformational for them, because what you experience in hypnosis, it is experienced very vividly, like it's really actually happening. So for her to have her mother there in hypnosis was like she was able to see her again, and to have also a deeper closure, because you can have many different closures before the person passes away. And this was a death that they were expecting because she was very sick. But this is at a different level, because this is on a spiritual level where the souls are communicating with each other. And it's a bigger and deeper wisdom that comes with it. After that session, her mood shifted completely. She had a different outlook of life. And of course, there were more work to do because there was a lot of other things that didn't get resolved yet. But at least there was that understanding of the cycle of life, and that she can understand it and that she can accept it, because a big part is the acceptance. And also continuing working with the emotions, with core energetics, and bringing the anger and being able to express it freely without shame, without guilt. Just being able to access those emotions, because they keep us stuck if we don't get to feel them.
Right.
It's interesting, thanks to everybody who's been talking about it beforehand, because it really lays some great groundwork. So if we know that we are all energy, and if we know that we're all part of oneness, the one thing that has been really showing up now in my clients, and the one thing that I would offer is a tool from Access Consciousness, is to be able to discern what is yours in terms of your energy and your emotions, and what is everyone else's. So if we are all connected and we are all energy and we all are super aware, especially now when the entire planet, all the humans on the planet have heightened sensitivities and awarenesses, it becomes really imperative to know what is yours and what is someone else's, and to have a tool so that you can clear your space so that you can begin your work that will be a contribution. Because when you do your work and you get clear and you get past or through a limitation, then that trickles out to everything else that you're connected to as an invitation for them to get lighter, as Mark was saying with his client, to lighten their loads. And so, and this is, you know, it seems as if by magic, and there is actually, you know, we need to start embracing more that really is the magic and the miracle of energy work.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought this up too, because as we're walking around, sometimes we think we're in a wonderful state of peace, and all of a sudden we go sideways and we think, what just happened? Well, the world just happened. The world's energy just happened, you know? And so we don't realize.
Yeah, that person who's just smoldering, that just walked by us, you know, like they're on a slow burn or a large one, you know, right? So that is something that we perceived, you know? So the tool from Access Consciousness is in the form of a question. It's called, who does this belong to? And then you can ask further questions. Is it yours? Is it someone else's? Is it something else's? In a lot of cases, because we are so energetically sensitive, there might be something requiring an energetic contribution. And it's often the earth, nature, the creatures, the plants, you know, they just tugged on you and you felt a little sideways. Well, maybe it's because they know that you have a repository of energy that you can contribute to them, because they don't see energy as good or bad or positive or negative. They just know that maybe you took on the smoldering energy of that person, and that's extra. And they'll tug it on you and say, hey, can I have some of the energy? And you can actually gift that energy to the earth. So I know there's a lot of points of views about that. People are
That's like, beautiful. I love that.
You know, people are like, oh, I can't do that. That was icky energy. I was angry, you know, and that was yucky. And why would I want to give that to the beautiful earth? So the earth is like, yucky, angry, does not compute. The earth doesn't have any point of view. It's just energy. And hey, if we're not going to use it and it's not contributing to us and it's not serving any purpose, then why not in a 1, 2, 3 gift that to the earth? So again, who does this belong to?
Love it.
Is it mine, someone else's? Something else's is usually the earth, and a 1, 2, 3 for that. And so when you ask the other two questions, is it mine or someone else's? Here's a clue. 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions from an Access Consciousness point of view are not yours. You're just like this big antenna picking up all of this stuff around you. So then that really boils it down even further. So if you can say 98%, you know, who does this belong to? If it starts to lighten up, it means it was not yours. And you can actually energetically return to sender with some consciousness attached, okay? Now, I know there's also lots of points of view about this. People say, oh, isn't that bad? I mean, that's like, you know, I'm not saying shove it down their throat. I'm saying it's kind of like when the postman comes and says, "Here, Julie, here's your package." And I just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is not mine." I'll just take it and put it on their doorstep and say, "Here's your package if you want it. And if you don't, it's okay with me, but it's just misdelivered, not mine. And now it's your choice what you would like to do with it."
Julie S. and I just had this conversation about an experience I just had in the grocery store this week. So that's why I'm laughing, because it's just it's so raw. And, quite honestly, I'm getting ready to push a blog on this topic, because the other thing, talking about pain and suffering in these times, is that living in a home with lots of family members that aren't used to spending lots of time together for so many hours during what could be very frightful times. Some of us want to watch the news, some of us do not want to watch the news, but we all live together. I see it as almost like dirty bathwater.
Yes.
If we're in this house day after day and we do nothing to clear the energy that everybody brings, then we're just all bathing in one another's dirty bathwater, because the bathwater being the energy. So I'm just getting ready to publish that blog, because I hear it time and again. Like, why do I feel so cranky? I mean, I do all the right things. I do this, it's huge.
And we were just talking about before we actually started the panel about entrainment. It's really hard when you're in that to not entrain to that. All right. Which is why it's really imperative that you understand what's yours. And innately, our joy is our birthright. And innately, that's what we are. We are light. We're not heavy. And so anything that's heavy is typically not yours. Okay. And so that's why I love this tool and why it works so fast, And so then what is yours, then you, again, can get to work on that. I think that actually goes a long way towards helping the pain and suffering in general, is if you can get that clarity about what's yours and get to work on what's yours. Okay. And return to everyone else what's theirs, with the invitation of, hey, you can look at this if you want. Right. And then people will choose when they're ready to choose, when the pain gets too much, when the suffering gets too much, or not at all. And we have to be an allowance of whatever their choice is. I mean, every choice creates something. And so some people will choose to stay with it, and other people will get to the point of like, okay, something's got to change. And that's when they'll look for some tools. There's an app for this. If you have an iPhone, I believe there's an Android, a free app. You can search for Access Consciousness. Who does this belong to?
Right.
It talks about what the tool is. It talks about the corresponding clearing statement that they use, a series of words strung together that don't make any cognitive sense, and that's because they're clearing things on an energetic level. And the tool allows you to program a tone or a ding every 10 minutes, every hour, whatever your choice is. And it invites you at that point, when you hear the sound, to pause, and for whatever thought, feeling, or emotion you're having, ask, who does this belong to? When people are ready, like I said, at that point, and they really want change, it can be a really powerful tool. I was actually at a conference for business entrepreneurs, and they were asking people what's their purpose. It's kind of heart-centered, soul-centered business entrepreneurs. And this one woman stood up and she says, I really want to start my business outside the family business, but I'm plagued with chronic headaches, and I suffer with physical ailments, and I'm always depressed. And so I caught her on the break and I said, what is the family business that you're currently in? She says, my family works for one of the biggest mortuaries and cemeteries in the LA area. And so I was like, wow, okay. So now she's got her physical pain and mental, emotional, spiritual suffering, compounded by all the people and the clients that she has, and whatever unfinished energetic business those who have transitioned beyond their bodies might have, and all the families that are related and corresponding to all of them. And it's been going on for years. So I said, I see you have a phone there. Is that an iPhone? See, why don't you try this app, and just talk to her for a few minutes. And we went on lunch break, and she came back, and I could see her running from the hallway. She was running, sprinting down the hallway. And I just thought, oh my gosh, maybe she's excited to get back to class or something. And she came running up to me and said, Julie, I have to thank you so much, because I never really realized how aware I am and how aware of everybody else's stuff that I was, and how much I was bringing that onto me and into my body. And she said, just doing this every 10 minutes for an hour's time, I feel so much better. She goes, I can honestly say I feel like you saved my life. And I said, thank you. And it was your choice. It was your choice.
That's beautiful.
And your willingness to receive something from somebody. And the universe is providing this synchronicity of our meeting. And thank you for choosing that, because now you're free. And think about the amount of people and energies that she's connected to in her business that are now also invited to be free because
Absolutely.
of her choice to do that.
Absolutely.
So that's I think of the greatest examples, and really
That's
important
awesome.
and powerful and so vital right now.
Yes.
In the times
Yes,
that we live in.
absolutely. I love that. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Speaking to this as like a two-part, how I would deal or work with people that I would kind of say that's like the creation of pain and suffering, or being in a pattern or a limiting belief. I'm going to work with them to kind of cognitively get into like where this is coming from and the root of it, and whether or not they're really ready to make change, because there's that part of it serves a purpose for something, and they have to make that decision if they want to change it or not. And I've actually had people say to me, oh, maybe I don't. Okay, then we can't go anywhere from there, right? We're just going to go somewhere else. So I'm going to share a story. I think this story kind of covers a choice that this client made of pain and suffering, and the reality of a death from it changed her life course. So this was a few years ago. I got called out to respond to a homicide, to go to a community center where the teenagers hang out after school every day, and one of their friends was murdered. And I arrived, and we don't get a lot of information ahead of time. It's like, here's an address, here's the time, here's a person to talk to you when you get there. And this is a gang-infested community center. And luckily, the girl that showed up, we always go in teams of 2, and she was Hispanic and she spoke Spanish, and I did not. And I contemplated staying or not, honestly. And what happened was it really put me back into my childhood. I grew up as that teenager with Hispanic friends that were hanging out with gang members. And I hadn't realized how far out of that and how much work I'd done to not be in that mindset. And so I really had to drop myself back to meet and match where the clients were. And we found ourselves walking in. So you kind of got to blend in and casually start talking. And there was a group of guys playing pool. So we walked up and we're like, hey, can we play with you? And so we start shooting pool. And, they're not wanting to talk to us because they're just like, I don't know who you think you are here right now. And just then, one of the guys that worked at the community desk, he walked up and he said, hey, can one of you come help? I have a girl over here that really needs your support. So I was like, I'll go because I can do the one-on-one, and the other girl can keep talking to these guys. So I end up in a room alone with this teenage girl. And she's just in tears, and she really doesn't want to talk. She's super resistant to talking. And I just said, look, here's what I am. I'm a volunteer. I'm a volunteer because I've lost a lot of people in my life. I know what it feels like to not have support, to feel alone, to feel like you can't talk about your feelings. I get it. And you need to know, I'm not a cop. I'm not a teacher. I'm not going to walk out of here and report anything to anybody. What you say to me right here, right now is absolutely confidential. And I had to tune into her mindset, which you guys have spoken to. It's like dropping in and tuning into them and what the need is and feeling into that and speaking to it. So in our training, it's acknowledging, I understand that you've lost somebody and that must be really hard for you. And then getting the person to express what they're feeling. And once I set that container and I hit a couple nails that really made sense to her, she started talking. And if I was a cop, she would have been arrested. Let's just put it that way. But she needed a safe space to share the dark, the ugly, the wrong, the right, the good, the bad, with no judgment whatsoever, but just complete acceptance and love and compassion coming her way. So we had our conversation, wrapped it up, went on my way. A week later, I get a phone call, and it was, hey, you were involved last week with this intervention, and we got a call now to come back and go to the high school where the kids all went to school. Can you come and do this for a classroom? Sure. So I show up and I walk into a classroom, and I hadn't realized the same girl that I had met with was in this class. And so everybody in this group looked at the girl. I caught it, right? There was a lot of nonverbal communication happening in this dynamic. And she actually stood up and she said, she's cool. You guys can talk to her about anything. It turned out this girl was a cornerstone of the gang. She was one of the lead head gang members that everybody listened to. And I was in a classroom of 15 gang member children all in the same class. And once that container got established, now they started talking. And again, now I have 15 kids telling me things that they could all get arrested for. However, those are the valid memories of their friend. They lost a very close, tight friend that was a family member to them. And this is their family. And they needed to share exactly what they did as a family, what got him killed, how he died, what they all experienced from that. And so it was empowering, because here's a bunch of kids that are making choices. They were making choices in suffering based on what they knew in their family systems and their belief systems. And now, fast forward, I leave, I gave them the safe space. They all shared. It was a beautiful, beautiful, just the memories and the feelings that they had for their friend. I felt like I knew this kid, and it was beautiful. And that's exactly what, it should feel like when we walk away expressing the love of someone that we've lost.
Yeah.
3 years later, my boss pulled me aside in a meeting, and she said, hey, I need to tell you something. I was at the police department today, and I got approached by a young lady that said, oh, you're, so-and-so, and do you remember the girl that came out to talk to us at the high school and the community center? And my boss said, yeah, that's Julie. And she said, can you tell her thank you? This girl, because of our conversation, left the gang and actually works with the police department in the gang suppression team to help other kids not make the choice to get into the gangs and to give them other opportunities. And it was so powerful and profound on so many layers, and that, my human side wanted to talk to her about, why are you in a gang? I did all the questions, I did all the stuff. It really, she had a nice family and a support system, and it was a choice. And she had strong leadership skills, right? So she was able to find those skills and channel those skills into helping people, because she needed to experience that deep grief and that deep feeling of what loss looked like at a young age by choice.
Yeah.
And it just went across so many layers and reasons.
So with that, I want to thank all of you for participating in this. This is really important to me personally, and I hope that all of you watching have learned something from this, have had a key takeaway, have gotten to know us from the energy practitioners, the world of energy work, have a bit more understanding of what this work is about. And of course, again, just like the iceberg analogy we used earlier, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the kinds of things that we do day to day, and how we do want to hold the space for you all, that we do want to be able to be in support. We do want to just help you to understand what you can do for yourselves as well at home. And thank you for watching, and thank you for being a part of it. See you next time.